Don't touch me. She said it like I was something dirty, like my hand near her arm was an insult she hadn't asked for. I pulled back slowly, smiled, and walked away. But I never forgot. My name is Maya. I'm 28 years old, I'm a nurse, and I've been married to Daniel for 3 years. I grew up in Atlanta, in a house where my mother taught me that you earn respect by giving it first. I believe that. I still do. But I also learned the hard way that not everyone operates by the same rules. Some people see kindness as weakness. Some people see a woman like me, young, confident, clear about who she is, and decide before a single word is exchanged that she isn't welcome. Daniel's mother, Patricia, decided that the moment she saw me standing in her living room for the first time. I remember that day like it was yesterday. Daniel had warned me she was old-fashioned. I didn't know what that meant exactly, but I came prepared. I wore a modest dress, brought flowers, smiled from the moment I walked through the door. I introduced myself, extended my hand, and she looked at it for a second too long before shaking it. Not because she was nervous, because she wanted me to notice the hesitation. She wanted me to understand right there, before dinner was even served, that I was a guest in her world, and guests stay in their place. I told myself it was nerves. First meeting jitters. People are complicated, I thought. Give her time. I gave her time. I gave her 2.5 years of it. If you've ever been in a situation where someone makes you feel invisible in your own marriage, where you smile and they look through you, where you speak and they redirect the conversation, then you already know what I'm about to describe. And if you've never been there, I need you to understand something. It doesn't always come with loud words or dramatic scenes. Sometimes it comes in the quiet moments, the ones that no one else seems to notice, the ones that add up, slowly, until they become something you can no longer explain away. Before I get into what happened, I want to say this. If any part of this story sounds familiar to you, if you've ever felt like you were shrinking yourself just to keep the peace in someone else's presence, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, because every week I share stories like this one. Stories about real women, real situations, and what it actually looks like to hold your ground without losing yourself. You don't want to miss what's coming. Now let me tell you everything. The first time Patricia made it clear she didn't want me touching her, we were at a birthday party for Daniel's nephew. It was loud, crowded, full of family members I was still learning names for. I had been trying hard that day. I'd brought a gift, helped set up the tables, laughed at jokes I didn't always find funny. I was doing what women like me are trained to do in those spaces. Work twice as hard to be seen as half as worthy. At one point, Patricia was carrying a heavy tray from the kitchen. I stepped forward to help. I reached for the edge of the tray and she pulled it back sharply and said, loud enough for the people nearby to hear, "I got it. Don't touch me." Then she walked past me like I hadn't moved at all. A few people looked. No one said anything. Daniel was across the room and hadn't seen it. I stood there for a moment, my hands still slightly extended, and then I lowered them and went back to my seat. That was the first time. It wasn't the last. Over the next several months, there were more moments like that. Small, specific, targeted. She would hug everyone in the room at family gatherings and stop just before she got to me. A brief pause, a hand on my shoulder if she was feeling generous, and then she'd move on. She would ask Daniel about his week, his job, his food, his plans, and then look at me like I was a piece of furniture he'd brought into the room without asking permission. When I tried to enter conversations, she'd answer with one word and turn back to whoever she'd been talking to before. One afternoon, I was at her house helping Daniel with a project in the garage. I came inside to use the bathroom and found Patricia in the kitchen. We were alone for the first time in a while. I tried. I genuinely tried. I asked about her garden because I'd heard she had a green thumb and I thought it might be a safe subject. She answered me in single sentences. I asked if she'd tried a new recipe she'd mentioned at Christmas. She said, "I don't remember mentioning that." I stood there for a second, trying to find another door to knock on, and then I just said, "Okay, thanks." And I went back to the garage. Daniel asked me later if I was feeling okay. I said I was tired. I didn't tell him what had happened in the kitchen because what had happened? Nothing, technically. Nothing I could point to and say, look, here, this is the thing. It was just the absence of warmth, the presence of cold. And cold doesn't leave bruises, so it's very hard to explain. I want to be honest with you about something. There were moments, more than I'd like to admit, when I questioned myself, when I wondered if I was reading too much into it, when I thought, maybe she's just a private person, maybe she's like that with everyone, maybe this is just how some families are. I ran those thoughts on a loop for a long time, because it was easier than accepting the alternative. The alternative being that Patricia had made a decision about me, and no amount of flowers or smiling or arriving on time or leaving early or being helpful or being quiet or being present or being absent was going to change it. The decision had been made the moment she looked at my face. I don't say that lightly. I'm not someone who jumps to conclusions. I'm a nurse. I deal in facts, in observations, in things I can see and measure. And what I saw over the course of 2.5 years was a pattern. Consistent, deliberate, and impossible to explain away as coincidence. She was kind to everyone else in that family, warm even. She would hug Daniel's cousins, remember their birthdays, ask about their kids by name. She would sit with his aunts for hours talking about nothing in particular, and you could see the ease in her body, the comfort. With me, her body went rigid. Her eyes went somewhere else. Her voice dropped 2 degrees. I talked to Daniel about it once. Only once, because the conversation went in a direction I wasn't prepared for. He told me his mother was complicated. He told me she'd had a hard life and that she didn't open up easily. He told me I needed to give her more time, that she'd come around, that she was like that with everyone in the beginning. I looked at him while he was talking and I thought, does he actually believe this? Or does he just not want to see it? I still don't know the answer. What I know is that after that conversation, I stopped bringing it up with him. I handled it on my own. And handling it, for me, meant deciding what kind of person I was going to be inside that situation. I couldn't control Patricia. I couldn't make her like me. I couldn't force warmth from someone who had decided I didn't deserve it. What I could control was how I showed up, so I made a choice. I would be respectful. I would be present when presence was required. I would not make Daniel choose between me and his mother. And I would not break down in front of anyone who could use it against me. That was the deal I made with myself. I kept it for a long time. There was a Sunday in March. I remember because the weather had just started turning warm. That first real weekend where you can open the windows and feel like winter is finally done. When Patricia came to our house for dinner, Daniel had invited her. He cooked because he's a good cook and he likes doing it. I set the table, cleaned the house, made sure everything was right. Patricia arrived, kissed Daniel on the cheek, looked around the living room in a way that managed to be both scanning and dismissive, and sat down. We ate. The food was good. The conversation was mostly between Daniel and his mother. I spoke when spoken to, which was twice. Once when Patricia asked me to pass the salt, and once when she asked what time it was. I'm not being dramatic when I say that. Those were the 2 direct things she said to me in 3 hours. When she left, Daniel walked her to her car and came back inside looking tired in the way that people look tired when they're relieved something is over, but don't want to say so out loud. She had a good time, he said. I nodded and started clearing the dishes. There were nights I cried. Not big dramatic crying, the kind you see in movies where someone breaks down on the kitchen floor. More like the quiet kind. The kind that happens in the shower or in the car on the way home from something. The kind where you're not even sure what you're grieving exactly. Just that something is being taken from you slowly, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. What was being taken was the version of this marriage I had imagined. The one where the family was messy but loving, where the mother-in-law was difficult but eventually came around, where all the effort I was putting in eventually added up to something. I had held on to that version for a long time, and somewhere around the 2nd year, I finally started to let it go. Not bitterly, just honestly. This is what it is. Work with what's real. So I did. I built my life inside the marriage in a way that didn't depend on Patricia's approval. I invested in my friendships, my career, my relationship with my own family. I made sure that Daniel and I were solid on our own terms, not held together by hope or avoidance. We talked about hard things. We built something real. And when Patricia came around, which was less often than before, because I had gently, privately reduced the invitations, I was able to be in the room with her without it costing me as much. That was the equilibrium. Not perfect, not warm, but manageable. And then, in September, the phone rang at 2 a.m. It was Daniel's aunt. Patricia had collapsed. Chest pains, severe. They had called an ambulance and she was at Grady Memorial. The voice on the phone was trying to be calm and not quite managing it. I was already out of bed before the call was over. I want to tell you honestly what I felt in that moment, because I think it matters. I did not feel satisfaction. I did not feel relief. I did not feel like this was justice or balance or anything that resembled a resolution to what had come before. What I felt was the specific instinctive alertness that kicks in when someone's life is in danger. I'm a nurse. That part of me doesn't have an off switch. It doesn't care about history or hurt or who said what in which kitchen 3 years ago. It just moves. I got dressed, I got in the car, I drove to the hospital. Daniel was already in the waiting room when I arrived, sitting in one of those plastic chairs with his elbows on his knees and his face in his hands. I sat next to him and put my hand on his back without saying anything, because there wasn't anything to say yet. We waited. The doctor came out after about an hour. Cardiac event, he said. Serious but not catastrophic. She was stable. They were going to keep her for observation. She was asking for her son. Daniel stood up immediately. The doctor said she could have one visitor. Daniel looked at me, and I nodded. Go. He went. I sat back down in that waiting room. Fluorescent lights, the low sound of a television in the corner, the smell of coffee that had been sitting too long. I've spent a lot of time in hospital waiting rooms. It's an occupational familiarity more than a comfort. I sat there and I thought about nothing in particular. I didn't rehearse conversations or plan what I would say. I just sat. After about 40 minutes, a nurse came out and said Patricia was asking for me. I looked up. For me? The nurse nodded. She said your name. Maya. I stood up slowly, straightened my jacket, and followed her down the hall. The room was small and quiet in the way that hospital rooms always are at that hour. Machines keeping their steady rhythm, the light low and yellow, the world outside the window still dark. Patricia was in the bed with the sheet pulled up to her chest, her hair loose in a way I had never seen it before. She always kept it pinned back, pulled together. She looked smaller without that. Just a woman. Just a person lying in a hospital bed in the middle of the night, far from the version of herself she preferred to present to the world. Daniel was sitting in the chair beside her. He looked up when I walked in, and something in his face shifted. Relief, I think, though I couldn't have told you exactly what he was relieved about. Maybe just that I had come. Maybe he had wondered if I would. I walked to the foot of the bed. Patricia looked at me. Her eyes were tired and a little glassy from whatever they had given her for the pain, but she was present, aware. She knew exactly who was standing in front of her. For a moment, nobody said anything. Then she said quietly, I didn't think you'd come. I looked at her. Of course I came. She didn't say anything to that. She just looked at me for a few seconds, and then she looked down at her hands folded over the sheet. Her fingers were trembling slightly. I noticed it the way I notice things at work. Not dramatically, just as information. Daniel said he was going to get coffee and stepped out. I don't know if he planned that or if it was instinct, but he left. And for the second time in 3 years, Patricia and I were alone in a room together. This time was different from the kitchen. This time there was nowhere to redirect, no conversation to cut short, no tray to pull back and walk away with. It was just her and me and the sound of the monitors and whatever was going to happen next. I pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat down. Patricia said, I know I haven't been easy. I didn't answer right away. Not because I was calculating what to say. I wasn't. I just needed a moment to take in the fact that she had said it, those words in that order, from her mouth. I hadn't expected them. I wasn't sure I had ever let myself imagine they were possible. No, I said. You haven't. She nodded like that was fair. Like she had expected me to confirm it and she was ready to receive it. I don't have a good reason, she said. I have reasons, but they're not good ones. They're the kind of reasons that make sense in your own head and don't hold up when you say them out loud. I waited. I was afraid, she said, of losing him, of him choosing, of everything changing. I knew it was going to change the moment he brought you home, and I didn't know how to be okay with that, so I wasn't. She stopped. The monitors kept their rhythm. Outside in the hallway, someone was pushing a cart past the door. I took it out on you, she said. And that wasn't right. That was never right. I sat with that for a second. 3 years of Sunday dinners and trays pulled back and single-word answers and cold shoulders and don't touch me, said loud enough for people to hear. 3 years of managing myself, holding myself steady, not breaking down in front of anyone who could use it against me. 3 years of the quiet kind of crying. And here she was, lying in a hospital bed at 3 a.m, telling me she knew. I could have said a lot of things. I had thought of a lot of things over the years. Conversations I'd rehearsed in the car on the way home from something hard. Words I had chosen and then put away because the moment was never right, or because I knew they wouldn't land the way I needed them to, or because I had decided it wasn't worth the cost. What I said was, I know. She looked at me. I knew the whole time, I said. I just didn't know what to do with it. So I kept showing up. She closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them, they were wet. I'm sorry, she said. Just those 2 words. Nothing before them or after them. Just that. I looked at her. This woman who had made me feel like a stranger in my own marriage, who had decided before a single conversation that I wasn't what she wanted for her son, who had said, "Don't touch me," like I was an inconvenience she hadn't signed up for. She was 71 years old, lying in a hospital bed, and she was sorry. I reached over and put my hand over hers. She didn't pull back. That's the thing I want you to understand about that moment. The thing that I have thought about many times since then, trying to make sense of it. It wasn't forgiveness as an act of grace on my part. It wasn't me being the bigger person in some performance of goodness. It wasn't strategic or planned or even particularly conscious. It was just what my body did. My hand moved before my thoughts caught up to it. And when I felt her fingers, still trembling slightly under mine, I understood that the trembling wasn't just the medication. She was scared, not of dying, or not only of that. She was scared of what she had done and whether it was too late to undo it. I didn't say it was fine, because it wasn't fine. I didn't say I had forgotten, because I hadn't. I just held her hand in that hospital room and let her know that I was there. That was the truth of it. I was there. I had come when she needed someone to come. The same way I had kept showing up for 2.5 years, even when it cost me something every time. Not because I was a saint, not because what she had done didn't matter, but because that's who I am, and I wasn't going to let her behavior determine that. We stayed like that for a while. I don't know how long exactly. Long enough for her breathing to slow down and her fingers to stop shaking. She said, "You're a good woman, Maya." I didn't answer. Not because I disagreed, but because I didn't need her to tell me. I already knew. Daniel came back with the coffee and stopped in the doorway when he saw us. I looked at him over my shoulder. He had this expression on his face that I don't have a word for exactly. Something between relief and grief, and the particular look of a person seeing something they should have done more to prevent, and are only now understanding the full cost of. He came in and sat on the other side of the bed. Patricia looked at him, and then at me, and then back at him. Some kind of rearranging was happening in her, visibly, like a room being put back in order after a long time of being left as it was. "She stayed," Patricia said to Daniel. Like that was the important thing. Like she needed him to know it. Daniel looked at me. "I know," he said. We stayed at the hospital until the morning shift came on. I spoke with the nurses, checked in with her attending, made sure I understood her care plan. Not because it was my job in that moment, but because it was useful, and I knew how to do it, and it was something I could offer. When we finally left, Daniel and I walked to the parking lot in the early light, and he stopped next to the car and just looked at me. "Thank you," he said. "You don't have to thank me," I said. "I know I don't have to," he said. "I want to." I nodded. We got in the car. On the drive home, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I should have said something to her, years ago. I knew how she was treating you, and I told myself it wasn't as bad as you were making it. And I let that go on longer than it should have." I looked at the road. I thought about all the times I had wanted him to say something and hadn't asked him to. All the times I had managed it alone because asking felt like it would cost too much, like it would open something I didn't know how to close. I thought about the conversation we'd had early on, the one where he said she was complicated and would come around. I thought about how I had closed that door and not opened it again. "I know," I said. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know that too," I said. He reached over and put his hand on mine, the same way I had put my hand on Patricia's a few hours before. I let him. Patricia came home from the hospital 4 days later. The recovery was slow. It always is after a cardiac event, even a moderate one. Daniel and I checked in regularly. I called her a few times a week, not long calls, just enough. "How are you feeling? Did you eat something? Are you doing the exercises the cardiologist gave you?" She always answered. Sometimes she asked how I was doing, which she had never done before. I answered honestly. We were building something from scratch with very basic materials, and we both knew it. The first time she came to our house after the hospital, she stood in the doorway for a moment before she came in. I don't know if she was remembering the last time, or stealing herself, or just adjusting. I came to the door, opened it wider, and said, "Come in, Patricia." She came in, I took her coat, I brought her something to drink. We sat in the living room while Daniel finished cooking, and she looked around at the space, the same space she had scanned and dismissed so many times before, and said, "You've made this really nice." I said, "Thank you." She said, "I mean it." I looked at her. "I know," I said. "I can tell." It wasn't a full reconciliation in that moment. It wasn't the kind of thing that wraps up cleanly. There's too much history for clean. What it was a beginning. A real one. The kind that happens between two people who have finally decided to try. Not because circumstances force them to, but because they've each looked at what the alternative costs and decided it's too high. There are things I will never forget. The birthday party and the tray pulled back. The kitchen and the single-word answers. The dinners where I spoke twice. The years of the quiet kind of crying. I don't forget those things, and I'm not trying to. They happened. They were real. They cost me something. And I'm allowed to carry that, to know it, to name it when I need to. But I also carry this. A woman who was afraid of losing her son lying in a hospital bed and saying she was sorry. The feeling of her hand under mine when I reached for it. The fact that I reached for it at all, without planning to, without calculating whether she deserved it. That also happened. That was also real. Forgiveness isn't something I did for her. I want to be clear about that. It wasn't a gift I gave to Patricia to make her feel better about what she had done. Forgiveness, the way I understand it, is something you do for yourself. It's a decision to stop letting someone else's choices live in your chest rent-free. It's not forgetting. It's not pretending. It's just putting down a weight that was never yours to carry in the first place. I put it down in that hospital room. Not all at once and not permanently. It comes back sometimes, the weight of it, when I'm tired or when I catch a certain look or when something small happens that shouldn't remind me of anything but does. When it comes back, I put it down again. That's what you do. What I want you to take from this story is not that you should stay in situations that hurt you. I want to be honest about that. There are situations where staying is not the right choice, where the cost is too high and the person on the other end has no intention of ever changing. Those situations exist and they are real, and you are allowed to leave them. I'm not telling you otherwise. What I am saying is that what carried me through those years was not patience as passive acceptance. It was patience as a choice. A daily decision to be the person I wanted to be, regardless of how I was being treated. To show up, not because I owed it to Patricia, but because I owed it to myself. To stay whole inside a situation that kept trying to chip away at me. That's different from just waiting for things to get better. That's holding on to yourself when someone else is trying, consciously or not, to make you doubt who you are. Patricia never told me why she was afraid. Not in specific terms. She said her reasons didn't hold up when said out loud, and she left it at that. I didn't push. Some things don't need to be said to be understood. What I understood was that her fear had been bigger than her love for her son for a long time, and at some point the night in the hospital, or maybe before that, maybe in those long months when she must have watched me keep showing up and started to realize what she was doing, something had shifted. That shift had cost her something too. Not the same thing it cost me, but something. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for her. I'm just saying she's human. People are more complicated than the worst thing they've ever done, even when the worst thing they've done has affected you directly. Holding on to that doesn't mean excusing it. It just means seeing clearly. Daniel and I have been married for almost 5 years now. Patricia comes to dinner most Sundays. She sits at the table and she asks about my week, and she means it. She still has moments where the old habits show up at the edges. A slight stiffness, a beat too long before she responds to something. But she catches herself now. I see her catch herself. That matters to me more than I expected it to. Last month, she came over while I was getting ready for a work event. I was in the bedroom struggling with a necklace clasp, the kind that's just small enough to be difficult when you're in a hurry. She walked past the doorway, stopped, came back, and said, "Let me." I handed her the necklace without thinking about it. She stood behind me and fastened it carefully. And when she was done, she looked at us in the mirror for a moment. "You look beautiful," she said. I looked at our reflection. 2 women standing in a bedroom doorway. One of them, the woman who had said, "Don't touch me," in front of a room full of people. The other one, the woman who had driven to the hospital at 2 in the morning anyway. "Thank you," I said. And I meant it. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever been in a room where someone decided, before you even opened your mouth, that you didn't belong there, I want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me your story. Tell me how you handled it, or how you wish you had. Tell me what you're still carrying and what you've managed to put down. This space is for that. I'll see you in the next one.